All right, welcome everyone. I believe we are live for our very first Google Hangout on air for the Milwaukee Art Museum's Hangout with Art MOOC or online course. I am Chelsea Emily Kelly. I'm the manager of digital learning here at the Art Museum, and I'm sure many of you who have participated in the course have seen me in a lot of YouTube videos at this point. So hello, and nice to be talking with you live instead of via YouTube. I am so thrilled that today we have artist Reginald Baylor with us to talk with us about art and inspiration to kick off our series of Google Hangouts. Before we get started and I turn it over to Reggie, I'm going to do just a couple of housekeeping notes for all of you as you watch this Hangout on air. So a bit about the online course that this is a part of. Welcome to all of you who are participating in the course. If you're tuning in without being a participant, that's totally fine, but we welcome you to join us at courses.mam.org. The online course is called Hangout with Art, and it's a massive open online course, or MOOC, for folks from around the world to get more comfortable looking at art and going to museums. For the past couple of months, we have been doing lots of different activities to help us look at art and get more comfortable with art with family, friends, solo, in museums, and online on the Google Art Project. And in this second part of the course, we have a series of live Google Hangouts or live conversations with experts in the field who use art and museums in their work. So today, for our live talk, we encourage you to ask lots of questions. The great thing about Google Hangouts is that we have this fantastic capability to do so. So if you look on your screen, you should see on the left-hand side a place to click Q&A, and we welcome you to click that and type in your questions for us, and we plan to have this be as conversational as possible, so the more questions, the better. And then before we dive in and get started, I want to thank the Google Art Project for being our partner in this course, as well as the Google Jumpstart Your Course grant for funding this project. So let's get started. I want to introduce Reggie Baylor. As you can see here, our other person in the Hangout. Reggie is an artist whose work is in the Milwaukee Art Museum's collection, and he's also a Milwaukee native. And Reggie pursued sculpture, commercial art, and art education in college, and there at college a philosophy class sparked his fascination with the line, which I'm sure he will talk a bit more about in a moment. Reggie's lived in Chicago and California and is now based here in Milwaukee. And while in Chicago, he began a career as an owner-operator for Mason Dixon Trucking, and also continued to work on his paintings. And after moving back to Milwaukee and receiving an artist residency, he decided to stop driving a truck and pursue art full-time. And we are so happy that he did. And he now runs an open studio in Milwaukee where clients and the public can come into his workspace, which is really exciting. So welcome to Hang Out with Art, Reggie. We're so excited to have you, and I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here. Very cool too, and I would say probably my favorite thing to date is to have a work of mine at the Milwaukee Art Museum, you know, my hometown museum. So yeah, I think it's been a good journey. I would say if I were to begin, what specific would you like to know right off the bat? I mean, you want me to start from the beginning?
Yeah, maybe start from the beginning and tell us a little bit about how you first got interested in art, and maybe even if museums have played a role in your art making.
Well, yeah, you know, I do remember as a youth here in Milwaukee signing up for, you know, off-campus or off-school art programs that were offered by the museum. So, you know, those extra activities were encouraged by my mom and teachers, and you know, there were even art classes in the parks during the summer, whereas you would go to the park pavilion. You know, if you're there between 2 and 4, there was always somebody teaching some type of project, and I always gravitated towards you know, making art more than I did any other activities like sports or reading. I prefer to draw and paint, so I would say from a very early age, I was into the arts. Always wanted to be an artist, you know. But so went to school for it, Wisconsin-Oshkosh, where, like you had read earlier, I was a sculpture major. Um, but yes, it was a philosophy class where they started talking about numbers and the value of numbers and numbers on a line. And at that point, I just realized that, long story short, that just led me to the idea of really refining a specific tool as an artist instead of trying to create a formula, be an expert on one number. You know, just be an expert on one number and hold on to it. And that pretty much, I fell in love with the line, you know, and really drawing. Its architectural and its geometrical relevance, which then sort of shaped how I color my work, because I don't color outside the lines, because the lines are the most important part. You can't color outside the line, which led into the tool that I use to make perfect lines is masking tape. And so I would say, of all things that through this journey, being an expert at the use of masking tape has more to do with my aesthetics than color or subject. So.
And I think it's really interesting, and I want to point out that it was this almost kind of numbers and mathematics and geometry that helped spark your art making. I think there's often kind of a stereotype that artists aren't numbers people or math people, and it's just not true. So much science and math goes into a lot of different ways of making art. So I think it's good to think about that, kind of how art can be really multidisciplinary in a lot of different ways, for sure. Maybe could we show some of your work, Reggie, so folks can get a sense of your how you make your work?
Absolutely. We'll show some, and then when you want to go back to another question, just jump right in.
Sounds good. All right. Do you maybe want to talk a little bit about this piece? This one's actually in our collection at the museum.
Yeah. This one is called Off-Duty. No. What is it?
I think it's On Duty, Not Driving, right?
On Duty, Not Driving. Thank you. You're correct. On Duty, Not Driving. But it's really a sort of an illustration of the idea of me being a truck driver and really wanting to be an artist. So this is, yeah, it's just, I would say that's what it illustrates, that discussion. But it also references how the skills that I brought with me, or the knowledge that I've learned being in the trucking industry and being an independent contractor, I brought with me when I decided to be a full-time artist, and that's what this piece is also about. So it's about the, you know, maybe the left brain and the right brain approach. Again, the creative and the logical side that I'm always trying to balance. This is a good illustration of it. But how I create my work is really a collage. I really Google search words. Cut through magazines for imagery. That imagery represents a specific idea or concept, and then I collage everything together to create this visual story that I want to tell. And this is a good case of that.
And I think just to pull out some more comments to relate to what we've been talking about in the course so far, that idea that you bring yourself to your work, not just your artwork, but your daily practice of working too. I think that's something that whether or not folks who are participating might we all have varying levels of interest in art, right? But our kind of visual, what we look at visually and what we're interested in visually can really affect what we do. So in your case, that kind of visual searching and collaging that helps form kind of the building blocks of your compositions, how you put things together on the canvas. But even, and we'll see this in future Hangouts too, how art can be can influence our daily work even if we're not artists, or even prior to being full-time artists for you.
Absolutely. I think it's always a good practice when you approach art is not just look at what it says or how you interpret it, but then also how's it made. I think a lot of people don't think about the artistic process because that's where all the creativity happens, is when the hands actually start building that art piece. And so when you look at a vase, even though the vase might not be aesthetically appealing, to step away and look at the construction of the vase, sometimes a viewer can find a connection that gives more time to look at the artwork. So I think that's what's been an advantage in my work is people recognize that the technique that I use is complex. So it makes the person want to stay longer and look not just at the content, but again, the craftsmanship. The craftsmanship, that's my favorite word.
Definitely, and I think that is a great way to go about looking at art. So some of the things we've been doing in the course have been kind of group activities or different prompts to look at works of art. But I love that
Hmm.
kind of close looking, not necessarily
Hmm.
getting wrapped up in content at first. That can kind of come more
Yes,
organically, but really looking at,
absolutely.
how was this made? And if
Right.
you guys are local who are watching, and our permanent collection is off view at the moment at the art museum, but once it reopens in the fall winter of this year, I definitely encourage you to come and take a look at Reggie's work in person, because you really can see that kind of crispness in the lines and the way that it's painted that really goes exactly to what you're talking about with the craftsmanship of it, that it's not completely flat. You can really see the different thicknesses of the paint from the way that you've put together the canvas.
Hmm.
Yeah, there it is. So, Reggie, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about if there were any artists or artworks who or which have played a role in your work or your life.
Hmm. Um, I would say Frank Lloyd Wright um, is, and you'll see that's why I started painting a lot of architectural works in neighborhoods. And I think that again sort of reflects back to at a point before I wanted to be a sculpture major, I had considered being an architect. Um, but an architect and a sculptor, they're really the same thing, different uses. He's one. I would say all the pop artists from Basquiat to Warhol to Keith Haring, um, um, abstract expressionists, Cy Twombly. I like the California movement of Wayne Tbolt and David Hockney, I would say. Um, and also, I think what's been really influential for me in the last 5 years is the insurgence in the contemporary African American artists. From Kehinde Wiley to Kerry James Marshall, um, Hank Willis Thomas. I would say, that they were instrumental too in sort of making me feel some familiarity, and that there is a room as an African American artist in the contemporary world. But again, the work resonated with me, and this was prior to me really doing figurative work in my work. I sort of shied away from dealing with people in my work because people are complex. Um, but that, I evolved out of that from still lives and architectural paintings. So yeah, I would say that, and then I also would say music. You know, music. Music is. I mean, that's boom. I mean, music's great. And I think I like music also because um, people can have a conversation about music that they like and they don't like, and have that discussion. And that discussion is a little bit different than discussions have about the fine art world, when they ultimately can sort of kind of work the same. So music just seems to be so universally shared. And so I think I just reflect that. Maybe it's just human nature that we dig that. But yeah, some good Louis Armstrong is really good painting. That's
Absolutely.
really good
Yeah, and
painting.
I love that we can even see the guitars in the background of your studio there.
Oh yeah, right, right.
Yep.
Yeah,
Living the
I got
music inspiration.
well, yeah, I got a, someone gave me a guitar for, as a gift when I started driving a truck. And so so I kind of always have a guitar with me.
Awesome.
That's
And I
okay.
think, yeah, and that's a really great, another really great point is that art and inspiration for art can come from so many different areas
Hmm.
as well. From influence by both older art and contemporary art that people are practicing right now, and
Hmm.
also from other disciplines
Hmm.
entirely. And I think you really
Absolutely.
can see that kind of that rhythmic quality in your work as well. I wonder, it might be great
Hmm.
to maybe talk us through some of the images that we have of your work to kind of show some of the architecture related pieces. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Awesome. And then we can kind
Absolutely.
of see
Sure, let's do that.
what you were talking about there too.
Great.
All right.
Yeah, that's Wauwatosa.
Which is a
And
neighborhood
actually, that
in
first house is
Milwaukee,
mine.
Wisconsin. Yep.
Yep. Mhm. And that first house is my house actually.
Oh, awesome.
And yep, and I still live there. This is Florida. This is one of the paintings that I put a figure in. It was first painting with a figure.
And I think that's really exciting too to think about how your own work can evolve as well. And I think we talk a lot about that in art history, thinking about how artists' work
Hmm.
moves from
Hmm.
whether subject matter,
Hmm.
what they're showing, depicting, or even
Hmm.
style, how that can change. But I
Right.
think it's something that really is universal if you think back to any kind of field that you're working in, or even as a student, your interest as a student, to think about kind of the evolution of your interests and the influences on why
Hmm.
those things changed can be really powerful too.
Right. Well, let's go back to those two last two images. The guy with the bicycle. Yeah. Yes. Well, if you look here, you see very few lines that are curved. And if you look at clouds, they're all straight. And this is prior to me realizing that the thinner I cut the masking tape, then I can make arches with the tape as opposed to geometrical forms. You can do ovals and circles better. The only circles that you really see here are the ones on the tire of the bicycle, and they're really not that well done. Now, if you go to the next piece, you'll see what happens in the sky. And notice the treatment in the sky is where I started to scribble. And I would take my pencil and I would do all these random circles and ovals and more organic shape. But I've learned at this point how to manipulate my tape to accommodate the complexity of the drawing. And so you see a lot more details in my paintings in progression, not by choice, only because I've um, become more comfortable with the tool. And so that's where you'll see the progression.
Great, and I think that is really key too, is kind of getting to know your tools and
Hmm.
pushing one tool so as far as you can possibly go, and then even further
Right.
past that. Yeah, and skill
Absolutely.
set wise, that's absolutely something that's also really transferable for other fields or interests too. Kind of pushing that one thing you're so interested in using to
Right.
a really far point and really becoming an expert in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and on that note, we talked about how museums are effective in developing yourself as an artist. Well, the museums exhibit the best of the best. So when you go and you see work, what you're witnessing is someone who's really refined their practice to enough point that institutions find it worthwhile to invest in. And so when you see these, so when you see a Kerry James Marshall or a Cy Twombly, and you go to the museum to see it, um, it's like um, it's like being on front row stage at your favorite rock and roll group. There they are right in front of you performing, and if you're a musician and you're on the front row stage, after the show's over, you're going to go home and you're going to try to play harder. And so museums make me want to go back to my studio and even work harder.
Love to hear that. So on that note, I'd actually love to know how you visit museums. Do you go with kind of a goal in mind and a plan, or do you like to wander and see what you come up with? When you travel, do you search out museums? That's something we're asking all of our participants in these live conversations, just kind of help inspire us think about new ways to visit museums and cultural institutions.
Yeah, you know, usually when I travel, I do want to see the museums, or, but again, when I travel too, remember architecture is to me as beautiful as a painting. So sometimes if I don't get to go to the museum, if there's a building or a house that I get to see, it's sort of the same experience. But also, you know, I do art all day. I paint all day. Most of the people I hang around are artists and painters. So, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but when I do go to a museum or a gallery show, it's usually pretty quick for me. I also like that too, because when I stop, then I feel that it feels like I'm learning something. If I find myself stopping at a piece and I don't, and I also like not necessarily knowing who the artist is. I prefer not to know. I like to see the work, love the work, and then read the artist. Which sort of kind of, for me, it works out well because I find myself finding extraordinary art everywhere. You know, and whether it's in a coffee house, obviously you're going to see some more challenging work at a museum setting, which I say is really important. I think that challenge should always happen. It keeps things moving. But yeah, I just take art in every day, you know, as it comes,
Kind of immerse yourself as much as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I love that idea of using your kind of quicker visits to the museum as a way to almost take a barometer test of what's really impacting you and what's really hitting you. Because that's a great way to kind of almost, if you go to a museum in a purposefully quick way, that when something stops you in your tracks, you know it's really powerful and it's really hitting you in some way.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Right.
I wonder too if you could you mentioned that you look for art in non-museum settings. Do you have any kind of suggestions of where folks might look to find art in unexpected places? And I know you've actually done some installations in unexpected places as well.
Right. You know, I think if people, well, I'm not, you know, I don't want to project on the people who are viewing right now, but I believe the average person, if they were to actually look harder, that they'll see sculptures in parks they've never recognized. You know, when you go to the restaurant, don't treat the art as background noise, but take a second and look at what's on the wall in the restaurant. You'll be quite surprised. You know, it's pretty much everywhere. I look at it in anything graphic, like a newspaper or the front page, the cover of a magazine. Everything that has a visual, anything that's trying to be communicated visually has an artistic flair to it, and you can look at it and sort of critique it. Whether it's an ad on the school bus or a commercial during TV or in a museum. So that's how I look at it. I try and look at line, shape, color, and composition in everything. You know,
Definitely.
People's clothing. Yeah, I think clothing is a great example of an art form that people can associate with. Yeah, so that's how I think you can get art all day through your life. Yes.
Absolutely. I love thinking kind of outside the box. It's not just painting
Hmm.
or sculpture. It's
That's
installations
right.
in a park. It's looking on the walls of
Hmm.
wherever you happen to be. It's what you're wearing, what you choose
Absolutely.
to wear, what others choose to wear. And I
Hmm.
think to your point earlier about your
Absolutely.
interest in architecture too, it's buildings as well. Absolutely. A
Hmm.
lot of art
Hmm.
museums. You mentioned Frank Lloyd Wright earlier, who is
Hmm.
a famous Midwestern architect. He
Hmm.
absolutely
Right.
is recognized by museums as being not only an architect but an architect artist. So I think that
But
um,
a true
thinking,
artist. Right.
yeah, absolutely. So we
Hmm.
have a question actually, so
Yeah.
I'll turn it over to Megan. So Megan's question is, are there any pieces in the Milwaukee Art Museum's collection or other collections that you visited that have directly inspired you? So I know you talked a little bit about artists that you've been inspired by. I wonder if there's any specific pieces that you might want to call out.
Yeah. I'm always happy to see the Wayne Tbolt uh, painting. I don't think it's like two or three slices of pies, and it's a really small one. That was at the Milwaukee Art Museum. Um, when the art museum had the quilts of G's Ben years ago, that was huge. Again, that's when I started thinking, okay, even museums believe that art is not just a painting, but it's a quilt from an obscure place that I've never heard of, um, from a community of people that were not what idealistically people would say were artists. So that I think that experience, and I had just recently moved back to Milwaukee at the time too. Uh, that was very important. I think time and exhibition that the museum has put on. I'm trying to think what else is there. Um, yeah, now I'm sort of kind of walking through the museum. I think the reason I go by and through it quick is because I like it all. It's I really like all of it. I mean, and I like all of it because I like artists. I like artists more than I like art. And if someone's took the time to make it, then I feel compelled naturally just to like the thing that was made
Mm.
because someone took the time. You know, as long as it's not hurting anyone, and even people can express what they want to say through their work, I might repel from that. But if there's no if there's no obstruction from me approaching it, I'm just going to like it. So yeah.
Do you think that interest in the artist and kind of having this propensity, this desire to want to consider as many pieces as possible, do you think that comes from being a practicing artist yourself?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think a professional doctor wants all patients to be healed and healthy. And so and that's what I look at. I really look at it as my profession, and being an advocate of what I do is more important than the product that I make. Um, so yeah, so I try and look at it.
Great. And just so folks watching know, I will, on our Google Plus page, I'll post some links to some of the artists that Reggie mentioned, including Wayne Thiebaud. And I think we probably have a little bit on our website about the Quilts of Gee's Bend exhibition. So I'll try to put a link to
Great.
that as well. Great. So I wonder, and again, as we just took a question from folks watching, but if you all have any questions at all, please feel free to type them in. All you have to do is click on the Q&A button on the left-hand side of your screen. Oh, great, and here's another one. Perfect timing. So Dustin
Hmm.
asks, do people ever mistake your pieces for digital works? Have you experimented with digital production, or does it interest you?
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yes, people mistake my work for digital work all the time. Yeah, all the time. But that also, I think, was purposeful. The idea. painting like a machine and as precise as a machine sort of is a testament to being a truck driver. Because as a truck driver for 15 years, I just saw everything America consumes is all machined. And I think I found some artistic expression in that, and because of that, I do experiment with digital work. Again, there's some things on all websites. Most of my work is done digitally. Because the paintings take up to 4 to 6 months for one painting. All the other work that I do over a year is all done digitally. And so I've done animation. I'd like to get into a Reginald Baylor Studio app where you could do games and coloring projects and perspective little tutorials. All using my artwork. So yeah, I really that's one of the next things I want to advance in the next couple of years is how I use technology as a tool.
That is so cool. I will be the first one to download that app when it comes out. That sounds awesome.
There's going to be some really fun stuff too. We've been brainstorming for a while, so it's going to be some fun stuff.
So cool. And actually, it might be good to bring up some of because it makes me, when that technology question made me think a little bit about some of the still lifes, maybe the early work you said that you were doing, even reminded me of pixels. So just to kind of show some more of your work while we're talking, maybe we could bring that up. Yeah. I'm sure it'll be up in a moment, but that's really great to think about, not just how the past can inspire us, but also current trends and current technology as well, and not only inspire your painting, but also inspire what you're actually producing as artwork, which is really cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of, I would say, one of the. It's not the earliest, but you can see where all the shapes start to get a little smaller, and they are less. I'm starting at this point trying to deal with texture more than I am architectural elements. So how does glass look? How does porcelain work? How does fabric work? With the corduroy-looking sofa in the background, and that was particularly why I constructed this piece, was to be challenged by all those different materials. There now we're back to the same idea, still life, but this is very early. This is late 90s, I think. And again, there's hardly anything other than a straight line, or a right angle, or a parallel line, or a perpendicular line, rectangles, squares.
Yeah, you really get a sense of, even just going to this next one, how much you've experimented as well to kind of get to pushing that material further.
Yeah, if you go to the one previous, which is an interior with 2 chairs.
And then I thought we have really good pictures this time.
Yeah, if you can go back one slide, that would be great.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. That was what you wanted, right? Yeah, this.
Oh, well,
the one right after.
Yeah, it was the one with the other chairs. Oh, that's okay. We'll just.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, you can really see that growth of how even the like you were talking about, the texture and the colors and the shapes, the curves, and how they all kind of, that even more detail that you've infused into them is so clear. I wonder next if you could maybe talk a little bit about what advice you might have for participants in our course, whether that might be if there are folks who are interested in going into making art or who do make art currently, or even folks who just want to get more involved in looking at art, going to museums. So I wonder if you could offer up some advice for our participants.
Well, if most of the viewing audience is here in Milwaukee, Milwaukee's got a very healthy creative network, and actually the creative network in Milwaukee, they're the funnest people anyways. So the way I look at it is, you know, if you're interested in this movement, being a partner, part of it, or being a witness to it, I would say participation is the best. And so a healthy understanding through social media and all the news reporting medias out here, what's going on in Milwaukee, and actually participating. Because the thing about, especially the arts, it's a great filler in for your evenings. So if you're already planning on meeting some friends to go out for some beverages, or 45 minutes, it's good conversation later in the evening. You know, the museums, they're always offering opportunities so that the museum is accessible to bring people in. Yeah, I'd say it's just a matter of participating. They say your physical strength grows when you exercise. Well, your creative strength can grow when you're around more art. So just being around creativity is actually just healthy. So spend a couple hours a week doing it.
I love that idea of exercising not just physically, but exercising your creative mind, which might look like it might be making art, it might be visiting places that have art in them, or that you can interact with art. Yeah, I love that.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Mhm.
All right. Well, if folks have any questions, feel free to post them, and we will answer any more that you all have. I think we'll have about 5 to 10 more minutes with Reggie here in our first hangout. And Reggie, I wonder if you wanted to talk any more about any other aspects of your work. We can pull up some of the different series that we haven't maybe talked about yet. We talked about the neighborhood work and a little bit about the still lifes, but I wonder if there were any others that you might want to talk about, maybe the interiors, if we can show some more of your pieces while we finish up.
Sure. Why don't we just page through some, and then if there's
Awesome.
one particular I could zone in on, I will.
Great. And actually, to that point, Mary, who's watching, hello Mary, just asked a great question, if you have a personal favorite out of all the paintings you've done.
Yes. Right now I have four total. I don't think we have them here on this slideshow. Yeah, one of them is. Ooh, that was a really good one. Not in my all-time favorite. Way up there though. And sometimes these were the all-time favorites at one point, but because they're so much older, they're like like your favorite child when they were children. So, but yes, this one's way up there. Let's move on. Let's see about the next slide. But my favorite piece is called "The Night Is Nearly Over." So if anyone wants to search that one, that's what that was. Yeah.
Is that on your website, Reggie? Because I can put a link on it.
Yes, that is on the website.
I'll do that. I'll put a link to it in our Google Plus page so everyone can see it.
Yeah, this was a piece that I did at the Pfister Artist in Residency program.
And actually, could you tell us a little bit about that program? I think some of the folks watching might not be from Milwaukee, so do you want to tell us a bit about the Artist in Residence program?
Right. The Pfister, which is a premier hotel here in Milwaukee, has a 1-year residency program where the artist moves the studio into the hotel lobby, which is in between their 2 restaurants, and the studio is open to the public. It's open to guests. It's open all the time, and again, it's an entire year. And so I was the first artist to activate that program, and it was a life-changing experience. It broadened the audience significantly. It also helped me work with a professional organization because I was an independent artist, but the Pfister, being the finest hotel in Milwaukee, they had really, really high expectations for what experience they provide the public. So I was able to learn, being immersed into that, and learn really quick that I have a responsibility and obligation to provide an experience to the public too. And the Pfister refined that for me, or that experience was. And now the Pfister is on their seventh or eighth artist, so it's the program's been going.
Yeah, it's an amazing program here in Milwaukee, and I think it's one of the first that I've really ever heard of as those styles of artist residencies in hotels. But if you're not local in Milwaukee, definitely see if any locations in your city have a similar program, because I think what's really cool about the Pfister one is that it is this totally open studio, and as a result, you really get to see what's going on, how the artist is progressing and what they're making, and all the artists are always so friendly and happy to talk and learn more about the folks who come in through the hotel. It's really cool. And actually that makes me think of another question for you, Reggie. I know you've done quite a few artist residencies, and when you were talking about this Pfister residency, you talked a bit about how it affected your art making practice. And I wonder if you could talk a bit about how, or if, but how those residencies might have affected your style, your artwork, your progression.
Well, I think where you work, when you change your environment, and where you work or spend your time gathering thoughts, when you change that environment, your normal thought processes change, simply because of the environment. And I think that's what the residency programs do. One was in a secluded prairie reserve, where it was all nature, and that yielded something then other than a Victorian hotel. But yeah, I like those adjustments in space or whatever the studio is. I think those are fun and challenging. Keeps you from being complacent or fall into patterns, predictable patterns.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, and on our theme of inspiration, I think that's a really great takeaway as well, that you sometimes, as an artist, a residency and a change of place might be the best way to shake up what you're doing. But even for those of us who aren't creating art, it's a great idea to it's almost like taking a walk at the end of the day. It could be as simple as taking a walk to get away from your desk, or to away from your house, or think about something new, or like that's what a vacation is for in some ways, right? Is to get that kind of new viewpoint. So it's a great takeaway to think about, how can you challenge yourself through looking at new ways to inspire, to shake up what you're doing, or motivate yourself in a new way.
Absolutely, I agree completely.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So we are about at the end of our time for this hangout, and I want to thank you, Reggie, so much for joining us. And I wonder if there's any last, anything you want to share with our participants as we continue on in this course, thinking about how to work art into our lives. If there's anything you want to leave us with.
Yeah, I would say if that's the case, then maybe do a Google search a day.
I like that.
Yeah, like when you're having coffee and just before you turn on the computer, Google search something artistically new and just hit the image button and look at all the images. It'll take a couple seconds, but I bet it'll be habit forming, and you'll want to do it, and you'll find it start creeping into your life naturally.
I love that idea, and I love the idea of using the Google image search. And something we've actually done as part of the course in the Google Art Project is finding a random work of art within the Google Art Project too. So that's I love that idea of making it a daily habit over coffee.
Yes.
great.
Absolutely.
And actually, I see we have one last question, so we may have you answer one last question. So a question from Mary. Does it bug you to have people watch you work in your open studio spaces?
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all, because, like I said, the guitar in the background, you have to get on stage, you know, because the live performance is better than the recording.
I love it, and that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just repeating myself. Yeah.
I love that, and that idea that that art isn't something static, that it is a record of something active that the artist's been doing. So how exciting to be able to interact with a contemporary artist and see their action in progress. And actually, wow, so now we're getting lots of questions, which is great. So one other question from Shirley that, if you don't mind, we'll work in. Shirley asks, could you please briefly describe your process again? Just maybe walk us through it a little bit. That would be great.
Yes. First thing I do is obviously research what the subject is. I take a lot of notes. It comes in a lot of written forms and sentences and bullet points. Then I compile all the imagery, and then I usually just try to draw directly on canvas. Sometimes the drawings are done on paper, then the computer, then projected. But those are only for composition and layout purposes, but the drawing really happens on canvas. Mechanical pencils and mechanical erasers and rulers. And then each drawing line is painted a color. Each drawing line is painted a color. And then that drawing line is taped by the desired width of masking tape for the line. That's the longest part of the process, is taping the painted lines. And then all the spaces in between, all the negative spaces, are assigned a color, which is done through a paint by number system. And then once the paint's on, you pull all the tape off, and that's how you get those underneath lines, in which we repaint the lines again. So, and I say we is because there's more than one person on the canvas because of the amount of time it takes to complete a canvas. We try to use as much help as we could get. I'd say Frank Lloyd Wright had carpenters, so.
Definitely, artist studio is necessary. And actually, it might be useful. How big are your paintings? I know because I've seen some of them in person, but I wonder if you could, for folks who are watching who have not seen them in person.
Here's one at my desk.
Awesome. That is a big one.
So that's 18 foot. The standard's about 5 by 7. 5 foot by 7 foot is what I like to be as the smallest now.
So definitely on a larger scale. Yeah, yeah.
They're large. Yeah.
Definitely makes sense to have more than one person working on them at a time and with them that big.
Right.
Yeah.
Did that freak everybody out when I did that?
That worked. Oh, this is cool to get a view of your office or studio.
Yes. So there's, you see that one painting on the wall?
In progress, yeah.
Right. And these are the notes for a coloring book that we're working on.
So cool. Awesome.
And that's a dress I made.
Fantastic. So yeah,
Sure.
definitely talking about using fashion as art.
Wait.
There we are.
Why do I see me now? Oh, okay.
There we go. We were making sure everyone could see your studio there.
All right.
Wonderful. All right, so I am going to wrap up our very first Hangout, and I love that we got to end with a peek at your process and at your studio that you're working in right at this very moment. So thank you for showing us. And I just want to thank everyone who tuned in to watch. And of course, Reggie, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts about art and inspiration, as well as museums, and your art practice as well. It's been a pleasure to have you.
And same to you. Thank you, Chelsea and Dustin, for your great production skills. And to everyone who signed in, hello and goodbye.
Yes, absolutely. So we hope that if you're watching, we encourage you to join us for our future Hangouts in this series. We'll have one every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Time, and you can RSVP on our Google Plus page, and we'd love to have you join us again. So again, thank you so much, Reggie, and everyone, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you all at the next Hangout with Art Hangout, and we hope to have you join in the course as well at courses.mam.org. Thanks, everyone.
Right on. Yep. See you. Bye.